Well, welcome everyone to Town Hall focused on the Great Plains and the COVID-19 pandemic. We can do this, Indian country. I'm David Kenoyer. I'm sitting in the Twin Cities suburbs of Minnesota, and it's been great to host a number of these. It's a series of town halls across Indian country, and we're really focused on COVID-19 vaccination uptake and how do we take on COVID-19 and do what we can to win? The numbers have been changing in the last couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about the so-called Delta variant, the COVID-19 variant, which is increasing infections and hospitalizations across the country. But we're particularly going to focus today on the plains, all the way from North Dakota down to Oklahoma. And if you're watching from anywhere, we would love to hear your comments during our conversation for the next 90 minutes or so. David Kenoyer, I am enrolled Rosebud Sioux, right in our target population. My Kenoyer name is from Yankton. The campaign is sponsored by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Indian Health Service. And our promotional partner for tonight's discussion is the Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board, directed by Geraldine Church and based in Rapid City, but serving the South Dakota and region. And we're going to hear from a couple folks connected with the health board. We Can Do This, Indian country is a campaign, and there's more information on resources to help you and your family and friends have a conversation about the vaccine, about the state of the pandemic, about this Delta variant. WeCanDoThis.hhs.gov. Let's show a little clip here of the campaign, which has featured information, websites, paid media, radio, some print ads, as well as social media. This campaign has popped up on my Facebook feed now for a few months, and let's get a little clip of something that might have popped up on your social media in the last few weeks.
History, strength, resilience, vaccines, modern day warriors. Together, we overcome.
Wow, it's a lot of American Indian, a lot of Indian country packed into 15 seconds, and it's been something, right, to watch the pandemic in 2020. Stay at home, mask up, really having to social distance, stay at home, be safe, elbow bumps, right, instead of hugs. And we thought we were out of the woods, right? We thought we were out of the woods in the last couple months as those orders changed, not in every place, but, you know, Walmart, you didn't have to wear your mask anymore. Many restaurants, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. At least that's what we thought. But now with this Delta variant, the situation is changing. And I'd like to get right to our first guest tonight, Nicholas Hill, who's an epidemiologist, a master of public health with the Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board, who's joining us tonight from Rapid City, also known as Rapid. And Nicholas, thanks for your time tonight. What's the state of the COVID-19 pandemic and vaccinations in the tribal communities that the health board serves?
It's a privilege and honor to be able to serve our 18 tribes and service areas spanning the Great Plains area of the two Dakotas, Nebraska and Iowa, and our health board, which is owned and operated by these service and tribes. We've seen these tribal communities as a whole work really, really hard to shut out COVID-19, and many were successful at doing this. In the first year, the first wave, or 3 waves of COVID, especially compared to some of the other tribal lands in other parts of our country, which were so adversely affected. But compared to the makeup of their population in each of the states, they still bore the excess burden of the cases, hospitalizations, and deaths by a few percentage points. And this means those exceptionally strong efforts to shut out the virus were still, with those efforts, there was communities and people are still being heavily impacted, more than average for all of the races in the region. And tragically, many communities, we have to say, very clearly lost valued elders and Lakota language speakers. And so even with that impact, the status right now is that, yes, we've had a low activity summer, just like last summer. But unfortunately, we may be lulled into some false sense of security in that. Those decision makers that indicated, like CDC, that masks could be taken off, we're looking at the data. We use data to drive our decisions. But now, with the uptick of Delta, we have to relook at that data again and start planning and preparing for what's ahead.
I think that has been one of the challenges, right, all along, that we didn't have a magic wand at the beginning. And then once people did get a vaccine, I thought there probably was maybe a sense that, okay, I'm one and done, I'm good. But with this coronavirus, right, we knew that there were going to be variants and adaptations of the virus, and we tried to talk about that right at the beginning, that the situation could change, which has got to be frustrating, right, to a lot of people who might feel that unfair or they've changed the game on us. But I think if we paid attention, right, those warnings have been there from the beginning. Nationally, not necessarily in the tribes, the 18 tribes of the health board, but nationally, looking at the entire population, infections and hospitalizations are increasing. And they're showing that of those, 80% are due to the Delta variant. You mentioned the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and today the woman who runs that said the country is at another pivotal point in the pandemic. What can you tell us about the significance of this Delta variant, Nicholas, and why it's worrisome?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that question, David. And it's probably higher than 80% of diagnosed infections are the Delta variant now. It's probably closer to 85 to 90% of all infections. We'll hear updates about that soon, probably within the next day or two. But I'd say it's very worrisome because this is a virus we cannot afford to underestimate. It's more infectious, and in fact, at least 60% more infectious than any previous variant. And it can colonize or infect tissues of our body at over 1,000 times the level as the original strain. And that's bad news for anyone whose immune system is not ready or unprepared for it, because that level of virus can overwhelm a person. So nationally, we have seen a tripling of cases just compared to a couple weeks ago, with hospitalizations and deaths increasing. And I'd really actually point to the United Kingdom to inform what we're going to see, because it's worked before, looking at what has happened in a jurisdiction somewhere globally where they first are facing a new variant. And what we see is the death rate has increased sixfold in the last couple of months in the United Kingdom, even during the summer months when we don't expect to see COVID and other respiratory diseases to be all that bad. And those age over 65 and older are still making up the majority of those cases, but there's something in the undertow, something below the surface that's not being discussed as much. And it's this: the death rate is higher in the younger people than what it was during the previous waves. In fact, the death rate in the 15 to 19-year-old, the high school age, is twice what it was in January in the United Kingdom. So what we think is happening is that the unvaccinated youth are being drivers of this pandemic and are being heavily impacted by it. We've said before, get vaccinated for your elders, but we need to change that narrative a little bit. Now we need to say, get vaccinated for the youth. We need to start looking, and even though those numbers of deaths are small in number, the rate per population, those younger age groups, they're heavily affected. And as for the youth, they have to remember that COVID doesn't have to put you on a ventilator to ruin your life. It can leave you permanently disabled in various organ systems, lungs, heart, vascular, or the blood system. It's not time to act all brave and pretend we're invincible. Now is the time to prepare and plan and protect yourself from that Delta variant. So we do need to really make people aware that this is coming, and it's coming pretty aggressively, unfortunately.
You make a good point there, Nicholas, that at the beginning of the pandemic, Indian country was largely focused on elders, right? Culture bearers. We hold elders in high regard, right, in Native communities. And it's said that elders and young children are closest to the Creator, right, with their wisdom and knowledge and spirit too. Where do the vaccines fit? And before we get here, let's ask this question on the screen. We have a question here, Nicholas. A recent report for the Oglala Sioux tribe says that they're at 26% vaccination rates, and Rosebud around the same. Does that sound accurate? I know we're going to hear from Gail Knutson later, who's literally on the front lines of putting needles in arms, but does that sound about right from what you're hearing there at the health board?
I would point to each of the tribal health directors and those who are in the leadership in those tribes to be able to, verify those numbers.
Sure.
What I can say is, there are some of our tribes have reasonably high vaccination rates, some even higher than the average for the United States. But we're not doing that great overall. Some are much lower, and considering that some of these tribes worked very closely together, and the community came together and did a pretty good job at suppressing transmission, and they're nowhere near herd immunity right now with low vaccination rates. That could spell trouble for these communities.
Yeah, and I appreciate, we don't want to call out any particular tribal community and point fingers or anything like that, but those two tribes are among the largest in South Dakota, along with Standing Rock and Cheyenne River. So maybe Gail Knutson, who we're going to have on a little later, a nurse who's been on the vaccine task force, can help us. But the question is, why take the vaccine, Nicholas? What do we know, right? Because we've had a lot of misinformation about the vaccine, some concern that it was sort of rushed to market in the testing, other things about, this is going to put a microchip in me and change me forever, a lot of stuff that's been out there. But what's the science showing about the vaccines in general, and specifically with this Delta variant?
Right. Okay. It's a very complicated topic. I'll try to do my best to address this. But what I will say is that the new vaccine platforms, these messenger RNA vaccines, are exceedingly effective. Big question is, are they safe? All indications of all of the research globally are now saying conclusively and in agreement they are safe. They're safe from the standpoint that what they do is they do not interfere or in any way impact the genetics or the genes or the makeup of the person, the DNA. What's happening is they're an RNA which cannot integrate with DNA anyway, but they're a small segment of the code for the COVID spike protein. And all it's doing is if you think about it in terms of, let's say an organization, the Great Plains Tribal Health Board here, we have protected areas of this health board, like the server room that contains all of the mission plans, everything that's saved securely for the organization. When the vaccine is given, if we think about it in terms of being like this building, that vaccine never goes into that server room. It goes over to the copier and it runs off a few copies, many copies of a spike protein on the specific place where a copier is there and only meant to be there for one purpose, which is to make proteins. And it just simply utilizes the copier that's already there, produces spike protein. It's clean and it's simple. Because it's so clean and simple, it eliminates the possibility for lots of other things that are unexpected to go wrong. because of that, my belief is we need to start moving a lot more of our vaccines into this type of a platform, this kind of messenger RNA vaccine platform. This is not new technology. It's been studied for nearly 30 years, 25 at least. It just hasn't had the chance to maybe get anywhere because so many clinical trials have been done or have to be done. And many had been, and much was being done with cancer research with messenger RNA vaccine technology. This pandemic has needed this to move to the forefront. And now that we have it and it's shown to be safe and highly effective, it's my belief as a scientist, simply looking at the science of it and the data, that we need to have more of this to protect us, not from just COVID, this pandemic, and the next potential pandemic in the future, but many other hard to treat diseases, many other hard to treat chronic diseases, infectious diseases, and other things that this type of a vaccine can address. And I look to a really hopeful future for that reason. So going back to the original point, this is a safe and effective, well understood vaccine. It's not going to put any sort of nanobots or these sorts of things that are rumor and not true into the human body. There's 9 simple ingredients. We know what they are. It does a very simple function for a short period of time. It's training the immune system. We need that boot camp of the immune system to get trained up so that when the attack comes, when we're exposed to that new Delta variant, and they are effective against it, our immune systems can do the job in a very careful way of eliminating it. Because one of the reasons we need to get vaccinated is because those people that end up on a ventilator or in the hospital, their immune systems overreacted to the virus. It's never seen anything like it before. We need to give it the instructions so it can know that it has seen something like it before. So it's more properly regulated when it mounts the attack when we're exposed. And I realize that's pretty complicated. I'm trying to explain it in a really simplified way, but let me know if you have questions or if any of those viewers have questions. We can definitely explain that some more. Oh, I can't hear you, Dave.
Essentially, we've been making these sorts of vaccines, as you said, with this technology for decades now, and we know a lot about how they work. And we also know, if you listen to the Centers for Disease Control director, that we've put how many million shots in arms so far in this country, 300 million maybe total doses. And there have been, very, very few complications. So we have some real-time experience, right, that it's working. And the science is showing us that if you get vaccinated, you're less likely to have hospitalization and some serious symptoms and side effects. So I heard also recently, Nicholas, that this pandemic is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, right? The unvaccinated. So how do we change that?
Yeah, exactly. That is true. We know as the unvaccinated have made up more than 97% of the hospitalizations, the unvaccinated, and over 99% of the deaths in the recent analysis. So how do we get people to be vaccinated? That's a really great question. There are surveys have shown that about substantial portion of those not being vaccinated are just very skeptical or fearful of it. And a substantial number are just waiting. They're waiting to see and hear a little more. Really, I think waiting to see if they really need it or not. Is this pandemic over, or is it coming for another round? Well, it's coming for another round. We know that for sure. We can look to other countries and already see it happening. So let's get just really real and honest now about the fear. I would say that tribal communities can be fearful because the healthcare systems have failed them in the past. Some people are very upset. Some are afraid. Some are traumatized and angry, fearful, some confused. So, that begs the question, what about today? What about the vaccine? What about during this pandemic? I would say that, many people are still afraid that there could be some after effects way down the road we just don't know about today. And I totally understand that concern. In fact, let's talk about that a little bit. Things like the use of certain herbicides or pesticides and things that have been commonplace in the past are over many years starting to show some rare effects and some cancers and other things like that. But let's talk about this vaccine. What you have to know about our immune system and the vaccine is that it's a quick exposure and fast elimination. Also, that when that infection or the vaccine takes place, the challenge to the immune system, you typically see any ill effects, bad effects, within a few months, if not, and usually even before that, hours, days, or weeks. So we can detect that. And we're not seeing anything of any serious concern right now about these messenger RNA vaccines made by Pfizer and Moderna. In fact, based on what I know of all the work so far, is that, we're seeing exceptional safety coming out of the use of these. Could there be something 2 years, 5 years down the road? I would say I don't think so, but I don't know with 100% certainty, and no one does. But I can say that based upon the evidence of looking at what's happening with these vaccines having been given, as you said, to millions and millions, many hundreds of millions of people throughout the world, we're not seeing the adverse effects or any long-term effects or medium-term effects from since when they started the trials.
Well, Nicholas Hill with the Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board, if you can hang with us, please do. We're going to come back to you if you're able to stay with us. Really appreciate your insights and your expertise in epidemiology and the Vaccine 101 reminder, too, of the mRNA technology behind this. In terms of, as that last question, how do we persuade more people to get vaccinated? The We Can Do This Indian Country campaign is trying to do just that with a number of strategies, really just trying to get people talking and asking questions so that they can inform themselves, right? We're not going to tell you what to do. We just want to put some information out there, have a conversation, and point you to some resources. And in order to start that conversation, there's a new social media ad in the works involving a fairly well-known Crow Indian performer and musician known on stage as Superman. And during this interview with him a couple days ago, we get to see a preview of the message to get more people talking about COVID-19 vaccinations. So let's watch this interview I had with Superman a couple days ago. Get vaccinated. Superman, welcome. Please introduce yourself. I know you're very well known, but some of us old codgers might need a reminder of who you are.
You bet. What's up, my relatives? My name is Christian Parrish, Takes the Gun, aka Superman. Come from the Apsalogan Nation in Montana, or the Crow Nation is the mistranslation of our people. My Apsalogan name is Oweage Machala, which means good fortune on Mother Earth. And my clan is the Ashichira, which is the Big Lodge clan. So yes, it's an honor to be here with you awesome people.
I saw you perform at a large national conference, 2019 it was, and you've got this amazing energy. You have a blend of traditional cultural vibe with a more contemporary feel, and you just seem to hit all of the notes right and really resonated with the whole crowd. A lot of students there, high school and college age, and you had even 40s and 50 something on their feet at times. I've heard you talk your story before, and you've gotten some shade, so to speak, about blending traditional with hip hop. But where has this come from, this center in you that is so expressive and so connecting?
When you start doing music, you kind of do it for the fun. It's like, hey, I love this. It's I enjoy this. It's fun. And then when you start to become an artist, and you start to have a live performance or somebody's listening to your music that you created, then you realize that the impact, you realize the impact that you're having on the listener or the participant at your performance. And so that in itself kind of helps me out. I realized that the positive messaging that was going out was affecting people, in a good way. And it helped them, they uplifted their spirit or, whatever, encouraged them. And so as an artist, to get that feedback from what you were creating, what you were putting out, to get that feedback in a positive way, like that encouraged me and made me wanted to move forward, and continue on being creative.
For the We Can Do This Indian Country campaign, you've contributed parts of your music and your vibe, your way of being. And why don't we play? It's a real short clip that's going to appear on social media, and it's still in the near final process. But let's play it to give the audience a taste of it, and then we can talk about it.
Honor our past, be influenced by those who came before us, and rise to make a difference. It's easier than ever before to be a modern day warrior. Let's get vaccinated so we can get back to making history. We can do this.
That's a lot in 15 seconds, huh?
Yeah, you bet. Quick.
Where were some of those images from?
Different powwows and just here in Crow Country, just what I do, I try to keep it home base too as well, like being here in Billings. Yeah, it's Billings, but it's Indian country, it's Crow Country. So yeah, it's like you heard the music there. That's the infusion right there. It's a round dance song, but it's also some hip hop music at the same time. So good vibes.
I know you've worked with G&G Advertising, which is the American Indian Alaska Native subcontractor for the We Can Do This Indian Country campaign under the Department of Health and Human Services. You've worked with G&G before. What's that back and forth process like? I mean, you're an artist, and all artists have a vision, right?
It's always good. It's always smooth. We connect good, communication's good, and they're always open to how I feel, especially being an artist and being, have been doing this for so many years. I know, the community, in Indian country, social media, and all of that. And so I know my own audience and how they respond, and just the whole community. And so when they had their ideas, we kind of brought them together and came up with that, which is awesome. We can do this. I mean, we've been doing this, so we can do this. We've been resilient, for so many years, and so we continue on that legacy, carrying on our legacies and making history.
What's the COVID-19 experience been like there on the Crow Reservation?
The impact that COVID had, on our res and in Montana was bad. It was devastating. Like there was so much loss of life, on our reservation. So many elders, language speakers, the cultural, the historians, they had all this knowledge, and then, along comes COVID-19 and just taking out our people in that way. So, we were in a state of emergency, in a state of shock, of what to do and, what's going to happen. And so, yeah, it's definitely, devastated, Indian country in itself. And so to be able to, hey man, what can I do? How can we help each other be safe? How can we protect our elders? How can we protect our people? And so I think we all kind of have that urgency.
How do we persuade people who are still maybe on the fence or skeptical, or maybe have turned to other issues? How do we have a conversation with folks to consider getting vaccinated and to pay attention to this now, right? With the variant, that Delta variant, supposed to be more transmissible and even more threatening in many ways. How do we get people's attention?
We get so in the routine of it's done. We're it's all good. We're no more masks, things like that. We easily get in our comfort zone, and I think at the same time, though, like the impact that it did have, on our families, everybody was impacted. Like everybody in on our res pretty much lost somebody, from COVID. And so that kind of like makes people understand that this is serious business. Like we have to do this, for our people to move forward. And so I think staying creative, and reaching out to the community and in ways like this, like with the PSAs and just kind of like continuing on, letting people know the info, and it's like we're not out of the dark, we're not out of the woods yet. We're still, let's make this, let's so we don't have to go through this again. Let's just solidify this protection here.
Let's look at what's going to pop up on people's phones in the next couple weeks from this We Can Do This campaign, and tell us what we're seeing here.
So you're seeing, performing. So when COVID hit, it was just like, boom, that was the end. There was no gatherings. People couldn't go to concerts. They couldn't have conferences. We couldn't go to, ceremonies. We couldn't gather. And so this is what you see is me, live, performing live again. See the interaction with the crowd, us coming together again, enjoying one another's presence. And so, that's where we want to be. That's where we want to be with this. And so in order to do that, we gotta solidify that. Getting vaccinated is one of those ways of where we can solidify that protection and that peace. I missed it, for that whole year. There was no interaction and so when I had another gathering, it's just like, hey, this feels good. I forgot how this feels to interact, to shake a person's hand, just to connect with them, physically. You realize the value of it. You realize the value of that connection.
Let's watch that 15-second spot one more time and pinpoint anything else that jumps out at you, because it's there's just so much there in 15 seconds. It's amazing.
Honor our past, be influenced by those who came before us, and rise to make a difference. It's easier than ever before to be a modern day warrior. Let's get vaccinated so we can get back to making history. We can do this.
Yeah, so definitely, honor our past. Bam, you got an amazing leader there. Sitting Bull himself. And then you got the old footage there of the dancing, of people coming together, and then you have me in my outfit. I'm there in the modern day world of the colonized world, but at the same time enjoying the culture, representing the culture. And then you have the powwow where, hey, this is where we gather, this is where we compete, we enjoy the songs, we enjoy our culture, our dances. And this is where we heal. This is healing. So you come from the past, honoring the past, onto the journey of healing. And that's what it's all about. Even in those 15 seconds, it says a lot, and it's a very powerful piece.
Did you have any questions yourself when you were thinking about the vaccine and whether you should get it or not?
We all had those questions. We all wondered about what's going to happen. Is this okay for our people? And so, yeah, definitely there's always that question of is it safe? And so, and then as I said earlier, to have it impact you, so closely to home, where you have, hey, somebody in your family, they passed away, that makes it, that kind of wakes you up, to the seriousness of the virus and everything. And so I think with Indian country, I think a lot of us were like that. We had the questions about it, and then when it impacted us, and we seeing, oh, hey, this is affecting our families. I got to do this. I gotta get vaccinated. I gotta mask up. I gotta do what I gotta do to protect our families.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I'd just like to thank you, for allowing me to be, a part of this great campaign, and I hope I do it justice. Just putting things out there with the community. I'm always trying to do my best, as an artist, as a human being. So I'm just honored and humbled, to be a part of it.
Well, that was a lot of fun for an old codger like myself. Something about his energy is just really cool. So he took us, Superman took us to Billings and Montana. Nicholas Hill took us to Rapid City, not too far down the road. And now let's go over east to North Dakota, where we're joined by State Representative Ruth Buffalo, who represents the Fargo, North Dakota area.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for joining us, Representative. How are you? And what's the state of COVID-19 these days in your part of Indian country? Did you catch that question, Ruth, or no?
No, I'm sorry.
What's the state of COVID-19 in your part of Indian country, Representative Buffalo?
In North Dakota, we're still working on increasing our vaccination rates. And so, nationally, North Dakota is a challenging state in terms of getting the vaccine, but Indian country is leading in that respect in terms of getting the vaccine. But North Dakota as a whole, we have challenges there. And so we're still really encouraging people to get the vaccine in order to help others live longer. Right.
I don't know if you could hear it there in your vehicle, but we had an interview with Superman, the Crow tribal performer, and one of his messages, right, was together we overcome. Right, together we can do this. That's a message that Indian country gets. Right, we're not individuals, we're connected to each other, but we also live in parts of the country that don't have that orientation all the time, right, that are very individualistic and all are about so-called personal freedom, and that has to rub off on us a little bit, perhaps, right, when our next door neighbors are looking at freedom masks and or freedom unmasked. How does that fit there where you live?
That's exactly it. We tribal communities. I'm born. Raised in Fort Berthold Indian Reservation. I was going to say born. We were all of us the majority of us who are from Mandaree. We were born in Watford City, which is 27 miles away. Had 94% of our agricultural land not been flooded as a result of the Pick-Sloan Act in the early 1950s, we would have been actually born, at Elbow Woods, which is underwater. But so aside from that, yes, growing up on Fort Berthold Indian Reservation, we always went to Dickinson, which was 85 miles south of us, to get groceries. And so we, as tribal members, my mom, my entire family still lives in Mandaree, and so they frequent Minot, Dickinson, Watford City a lot to get groceries and to get their, additional services. And so it's just common sense to help our neighbors out who might be more susceptible to not surviving COVID-19. So it just makes sense to do our part in order to protect everyone, regardless of it, if it's an inconvenience to wear masks, regardless of it, if you don't believe in the vaccine, you're actually helping the greater good by getting the vaccine.
Yeah, thank you. And be careful driving there. I love how you were multitasking, driver, mom, interviewer, all at once. You are an elected official and always trying to have conversations, right, in order to make progress, whether it's people of a like mind, trying to get them on board, people of a different mind, trying to come together to do something, to make progress. What have you found are some of your strategies around having conversations across these differences, right, so that we can come together around anything?
I think just finding common ground. We're all human beings, and we all want safe communities and stronger communities. And hello?
You're back.
Sorry, I had an incoming call, but just finding common ground, just having a conversation one-on-one with each other. We find more similarities than we do differences, and a common theme one sure way to find a way to build relationships in what would be considered a hostile environment at times is through humor. And so everybody loves to laugh and to joke, and that's been one sure way that I've found a way to build relationships is finding ways to laugh and find humor in things.
Good point. And right, even with some of the more difficult challenges in life, or tensions, if you will, right, and those differences, a joke about it can go a lot further than hitting the nail on the head or what have you. So there's a lot of wisdom there. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Representative Ruth Buffalo from North Dakota, regarding the pandemic and what's next for your constituents and your MHA tribal people?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the mourners, and I truly believe that from a public health thing, and getting to the root cause. And we know throughout Indian country we've had historic policies that really were a detriment to our population's health. And so finding ways to really work upstream, and find ways to prevent further chronic illnesses and disease is really needed. And so I hope that we can continue to be good to one another and really find ways to help each other live longer. So that's all I have to add at this point. So I just want to say thank you, Madzigirats, for having me.
Well, thank you for taking time. Drive safely, and love to hear from you in the future on this subject, because I have a feeling we're in it for the long haul. So take care, and appreciate you joining us tonight. Representative Ruth Buffalo of North Dakota. Well, this is We Can Do This Indian Country, a town hall focused on the Great Plains, and we've touched on Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota. I'm based in Minnesota, which isn't considered the plains, but maybe the sliver of the state to the west. This is a campaign under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, also partnering with the Indian Health Service, and tonight the Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board. But there's a number of resources on wecandothis.hhs.gov that I'd like to point out. And there's literally a very prominent link right now to misinformation about the campaign. And so if you go to wecandothis.hhs.gov, confronting COVID-19 vaccine misinformation is right there in the upper right. And click on that and check it out. And if anything, it's a conversation starter with folks about, hey, why haven't you been vaccinated? They've been offering these down at the clinic for months now. There's plenty of vaccine to go around. Let's just go get it done, right? Oftentimes you don't even need an appointment. I was just traveling and happened to be in the airport, and literally there's a little setup, a kind of a pop-up vaccination stand in the airport. So there's vaccine available, and if you've got questions about it, go to wecandothis.hhs.gov and check out the vaccine misinformation. There's also resources there appropriate for the American Indian Alaska Native community, including flyers and specific information for Native American people and communities. So go to the website, check it out, wecandothis.hhs.gov. There's also a link to an interview conducted not too long ago with the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control Director, Rochelle Walensky, who talked about the Delta variant, the vaccine safety, and she's talking to Ryan Seacrest. So he cuts to the point and makes it very accessible. So if you're looking for something to do after we're done with this conversation, go check that out. very compelling information about vaccine and efficiency, efficacy, and why it's so necessary. So please check that out. wecandothis.hhs.gov. Earlier we heard from Superman. Together we can overcome. And the next phase of these campaigns for a while now has been focused on children. Children 12 and older are eligible, right? The vaccine has been proven to be safe with adolescents down to 12-year-old. And as we heard earlier from Nicholas Hill, an epidemiologist with the Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board, we need to shift from focusing on elders first to now let's get our children vaccinated so that they can go back to school, so that we don't see what's happened, according to Nicholas, in England and the United Kingdom, where more devastating impacts of the coronavirus with this Delta variant are impacting young people, teenagers, 20-somethings, who are getting terribly sick. And Nicholas is worried that could be the trend in this country. So in order to continue this conversation, I wanted to bring in a mom and a community advocate from the great state of Oklahoma, where are, 37 federally recognized tribes. There's quite a few down in Oklahoma. But Jasha Lyons Echohawk, who's a member of the Seminole Nation, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're doing well tonight, and we appreciate your time. I love your backdrop there. You want to introduce yourself and then let us know about the status of COVID-19 in your community?
For sure. Mado, thank you for having me. No akitaru tatasa titata chikstariku, stongo, Jasha Lyons Echohawk, Jahajakados. Hello, everyone. My name is Jasha Lyons Echohawk. I'm actually an intertribal love song. I'm enrolled with the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, but I'm also a member of the Pawnee Creek, Omaha, and Iowa tribes. And I actually resided in Pawnee Territory here in Oklahoma. So very, again, honored to be here amongst some of these folks you've already interviewed thus far. Yeah, I'm a birth worker, a student midwife, current grad student with the University of Oklahoma's College of Law, Master of Legal Studies, Indigenous Peoples Law program. And like you mentioned, a community advocate, usually just it's how I got acquainted with some of the folks that are behind the scenes for this campaign, because of a variety of campaigns that I've actually been commissioned to do during this pandemic, one of them being the census and convincing our folks to be counted, as well as getting out the vote in Indian country.
What I love the intertribal love story. I think that could be our next message for you and some of your people to help us do, right? Because this is a intertribal love story. I mean, if we're going to really take on COVID and the next pandemic and the next challenge in our communities, right, we've got to do it together. And in our communities, values, right, values drive it all. Mm-hmm. From generosity to reciprocity to taking care of each other and, expressing love if that's what it is. What's COVID-19 like there? Vaccines and what's the talk in and around Seminole and Pawnee country there?
Unfortunately, some of our folks that have been vaccinated are getting have been, had several exposures to folks who have caught the variant. And a lot of these folks that have caught the variant are unvaccinated. And so many of us, especially those of us that are vaccinated, have, gone back to wearing masks or going to those COVID-19 protocols that, that have been in existence since, last March. We're still trying to continue and carry on in the best ways that make sense, culturally, or when there's community events. And yet, the threat exists. I was just with some relatives over this past weekend one of the babies that, or one of the families that I helped supported during the birth of this baby. They had a laughing party, and we, all the folks that were there, more or less were vaccinated. Those folks 12 years of age and over were vaccinated, so we felt safe to be in this event outside. And just hearing how one of these relatives who had a brother who had been vaccinated, unfortunately was in the hospital because they contracted COVID-19. However, they had comorbidities, so there was a concern that this person was not going to live through this battle. And there's no way to know how they contracted the vaccine. However, when you look at the rates within the state and even within the county that I reside, we're in the county that I reside, we're at 34% fully vaccinated, and the state of Oklahoma, as it's known, Indian Territory, is vaccinated at a rate of about 39 or 40%, which is definitely not at the rate we need for herd immunity or to be able to safely go out into larger spaces and places, maskless.
You mentioned working with mothers to be and through the birthing process and with families. How do you help folks understand the importance of getting vaccinated? Right in the beginning, it was for our elders, but now, right, the focus is more and more on younger people and the unvaccinated as this pandemic becomes a pandemic of the unvaccinated in many ways.
So working with parents to be and their respective families, it really has, been challenging to make sure everybody has the proper information. During the census effort, some of the work that I did, we were able to, a lot of our work was virtual, just like this. We did these kind of live stream events. And because people are pulling their information from social media sources, I think it's somewhere like 70% of our population, the US population, pulls their information sources from social media platforms. So it could be like Facebook, could be YouTube, could be Twitter, even Instagram and TikTok. So making sure that the information that they're catching is correct, is factual, is evidence-based. And a lot of what I could pull during this time, because I'm also a lactation advocate, was ensuring that as much research that was possible, was available to these folks. I can't push, anything on them. However, I do recognize, we are a community as Native people that are disproportionately impacted by hospitalization because of COVID-19 and death at that. So ensuring that these families were safe at this time, ensuring that they were making their best or informed decisions, and more often than not, these pregnant people were getting the vaccine to protect themselves and their children. Some of the birth of these Native people were more often in the hospitals. So I think that what was expressed to me was the concern of catching COVID in the hospital. So if that's where they had to deliver, then they wanted to make sure that they were as safe as possible. And then in terms of lactation or being able to express milk from body to baby, that's also shown to be a very low risk in terms of any complication from the vaccine. Like it's more or less the benefits outweigh any risk. And so there's a lot of lactating parents who have safely received the vaccine and been able to continue safely expressing milk to their babies. So that's been, where I've been able to play a part in this community role.
What I understand, your daughter is also vaccinated or chose to be vaccinated, and you made that family decision. What was that like?
We are a family of 6, and I was the one who caught COVID in our house, and it didn't feel inevitable. It actually was quite a surprise for our family because I was one of the most vigilant folks. I was the one that had to go, do the chauffeuring or the like running to pick up food or groceries, and even in this community work, going to be with these families or doing mutual aid. So I took a lot of precautions to make sure that I was keeping myself safe as possible and not bringing it back to my house, because we do have immunocompromised folks in our home. And thankfully, I guess my infection was not severe. I didn't have too many long-term effects, but I definitely wasn't hospitalized. And so I think, that probably played part of, or definitely weighed in her decision. Again, we shared information. There was, for us, it was more of a family conversation, and it came down to really her just feeling like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what I think I need to do. She plays sports, and so it was really difficult for her this year. And our school district was one that did like a either you were in person or you were virtual, and the virtual is really tough. That's what we initially started off with the 3 kids who were going to school, started off virtually, and it was a real struggle. Inequity in that way. We did our due diligence with advocating to the school board, especially on behalf of these Indian kids that our community is comprised of. And then when we, decided to go ahead and put them in the school system, we were almost nearly immediately, like, those kids were exposed. One of the kids was exposed in one grade, and then the other kid, like 2 weeks later, was exposed, and then another 2 weeks, like within the 6 weeks left of school, all 3 were exposed and had to be quarantined. So then, they couldn't participate in any athletics or anything like that. By the springtime, it was very limited what we were accepting or what we thought would be okay to do. Everything's kind of with its own risk. And I think that's also played a part in the decision that she felt she could make for herself. And so, we felt like the information that we had, all the things that we could read that, again, was evidence-based, as much research that was out there. And she and many of her friends were all talking about, getting the vaccine and who got it and when they got it, taking selfies, taking pictures, and posting them, to their own socials. So thank you for asking.
Well, and everyone's healthy at the moment then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we feel safe.
I can relate to the issue with sports. I've got 2 daughters myself, and the younger one is a soccer player, and I haven't seen her play soccer in, 19 months,
Mm-hmm.
and she actually went to college to be a student athlete, and her team went through some really off and on practices, no games at all last fall. And then practice was, hit or miss depending. And then there were some infections on the team, and then, poof.
Yeah.
So it's just been really tough on our kids, and to get them vaccinated and to listen to folks like you to start the conversation, who's obviously so tuned to this. Jason, stay with us. I want to bring in our last guest, but not least by any means, Dale Knutson, member of the Oglala Sioux tribe, and works for the Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board. And we're so grateful to have the participation of you, Dale, and your colleague Nicholas Hill earlier. And Nicholas is still with us, and we might bring him back in a second here. Dale, what is the status of COVID-19 in your work as a nurse on the front lines of literally trying to put needles in arms there in the large landmass and population base that you serve in southwestern South Dakota?
So the current status is we continue to offer vaccines in multiple different forums. We go out into the communities. We have a mobile unit that we post our most current PSAs for where we're going on our Facebook page, because that does change, but not often. We go certain locations every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with that mobile unit to offer vaccines across the reservation at Pine Ridge. But as I'm actually the chief nurse for Indian Health Service for the Great Plains area, I do a lot of on-site help at Pine Ridge right now because we're very thin. We're very spread thin and spread far, and with nursing staff, it's all boots on the ground right now. And I do want to do a shout out to our nurses and our pharmacists and our providers that everybody has done just a phenomenal job throughout Indian country in not only offering testing, but then quickly turning to offering vaccines in different methods than we have done historically before. And that's taken a great amount of partnership with our tribal health partners and our communities abroad. We also brought in the spring we partnered with FEMA, Indian Health Service partnered with FEMA, and we ran two trucks simultaneously, one across North Dakota and one across South Dakota, and partnered with our Indian Health Service clinical folks to offer the vaccine. FEMA provided the mobile unit and the supplies. And we have really tried to work outside of our normal boxes or our normal workflows, and that's taken a great amount of challenge, but it's been very extremely rewarding.
Well, thank you for your efforts. And Dale, you talked about partnership, and I apologize. I connected you very closely to the Chairman's Health Board as a employee, but you actually work with Indian Health Service, and
they're one of our best partners.
And I should have known that because earlier you were talking about the Aberdeen area office, and yours truly here was born in Aberdeen on a really cold November night because my dad was working at the area office there back in the day. So circles come back full circle. What if you could wave a wand, right? If you could wave a wand, and I know it's not something that we ask scientists and medical people, but how do we get in front of this, right? How do we get in front of this? You've talked about being stretched thin yourself, so that's one thing to address. I know some communities have deputized other people, right, to give vaccinations. But what do we need to do to get people to increase the demand, really, right?
Well, that's interesting, and I think I often say if they would make me clean for a day, laughingly at work. However, I think the most important thing we can do to learn about our future is to reach back to our past and look at the different challenges and evaluate how folks dealt with those challenges in the past. And with communicable disease like COVID that has large transmission rates and knows no bounds for all ages and all races, we do need to look back to the past and see how we as scientists, as people, have been able to get ahead of that. And one of the greatest resources we have historically is vaccine. There's a lot of fear around vaccines. How are they made? And of course, the mRNA vaccine is a relatively new way. It's perceived as new to the mainstream folks. But as Dr. Hill indicated, this method has been around and has been researched for many years. And now globally, we have given millions of doses, and it's been very safe and very effective. And the other thing I think that I haven't already heard mentioned is that there is more transparency through our vaccine efforts, and when scientists are reviewing vaccine data through the vaccine adverse events reporting and mechanisms like that, it's immediately in the news. So that leads to a lot of transparency, which I think and hope will give people confidence that no one is taking this very lightly. This is serious. It's affected us all in a very harmful and negative way. And there's just so much about the long-term effects of this disease that we don't know, that there's a lot of things we just won't know for the next several years. Some of you may have heard the term long haulers, and that's some of our individuals that have had infection and they just can't get over the symptoms. Many of them have multiple chronic diseases they're dealing with, and because of that, they're not recovering as would be expected. And so the clear thing is that this disease impacts people very differently for a wide variety of reasons, and sometimes we don't know why it's so severe in a seemingly healthy person. And Dr. Hill spoke very eloquently of that earlier regarding the children. And we do need to look across the ocean to see what's happening in our countries, in the young people, because right now this Delta variant is very easily spread from one person to another. And that's the population that's unvaccinated primarily right now. So they're going to catch it. They're going to spread it. And right now we just don't know what the short-term or long-term effect is going to be on that. We do have very good vaccines available. And even if the vaccine does not fully protect, because no vaccine in the world is 100%, these vaccines have a very high efficacy rate for protecting people. But what we do know about COVID vaccine, as well as other vaccines, is if you have the vaccine, it can protect you if you do get the disease from having it'll give you a milder case. So the case, if you hadn't have been vaccinated, could have been very severe, but you do have that somewhat level of protection. I think Dr. Hill said it very well when he said that the body has recognized this before, because the people that wound up in the ICUs had a hypersensitive or a really big response because the body hadn't seen this virus before. And that does happen in some people, but if we give them the vaccine, the body recognizes it and it's built up some immunity against it, and it doesn't go into that hypersensitive mode. So people have the disease, but they do recover.
Thank you for explaining that. And we have a couple questions that have come through the comment section, and I'd ask Nicholas Hill just to come back on screen too, so in case he wants to take a crack at some of these questions. But one of the questions is in terms of how people are affected by the vaccine, right? That was one of the concerns, maybe when the vaccines were first available. I got my vaccine, I think mid-April, and my arm was quite sore for 24 hours or so, and I kind of felt tired, but that was about it. Some folks had no reaction, and then others were kind of felt like they had the flu or something, right, for maybe a day or two. Is there any difference in body type in terms of what you all have seen or read or heard in terms of large people versus smaller people, reacting to the vaccines differently?
I really haven't seen the data that shows the stature or size of body size of a person having the effect. But it does vary. It varies from person to person, just as you mentioned. And it varies according to, the person. It depends on various elements of inflammation that happens after the challenge has occurred with the vaccine. When I had mine, and most people, when they have that first dose, they don't have typically a reaction, maybe a little sore arm, especially if you put that needle alongside or through a nerve or something like that. Yes, this can happen. That doesn't damage anything relating to long-term effects. It's just the needle going in the arm and delivering the vaccine. After the second dose, the immune system is primed, and usually if someone's going to have a reaction, it's going to be redness, soreness of that arm, and it is going to be feeling fatigued and run down. That's basically a measure, and actually some good assurance perhaps, that the vaccine's challenging the immune system, and the immune system is responding and doing what's needed and necessary. I figured that was like a badge of assurance for me. I walked around saying, yeah, I felt like I was pretty run down after that second vaccine dose. Boy, I'm ready to take on the world now. I don't have to be afraid of this virus. And I would say that for people that are kind of concerned, do talk to other people who've had the vaccine and continue to, continue to learn about what it takes to, to get through that. If you're someone who you think might have that inflammatory reaction and, be, for 24 hours be in really bad shape, you can take ibuprofen and you can take Tylenol. And I would recommend, especially taking that. You can even take it before a reaction like that could occur. As long as you have taken the ibuprofen or Tylenol in the past before, and it's safe for you, by all means, take that, and that will really help you through it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt on that second dose. Was like it must have been working. I like how you frame that. What's your advice in terms of helping if people want to find the vaccine in their community, in their district? What's the best way to go about that? Say, Dale, how do you answer that question? I want the vaccine. What do I do? How do I find it?
So the best thing to do is to reach out to your local healthcare institution, whether that's a tribal health clinic or the Indian Health Service. Most of those programs have Facebook pages, so you can search social media to see. We're always putting our most current public service announcements up there, indicating where we're at and how long we're going to be there. I do want to stress that I want people to be prepared, because one of the things that COVID did was made people fearful of coming to their hospitals and clinics for routine care. And another thing we have seen as a bad outcome of COVID is that we have a lot lower rates in our routine childhood immunizations, and not just childhood, but from infant to elder. Across a person's lifespan, there are multitudes of vaccines that we give to prevent disease. And so in order to counteract that, what all of our Indian health programs are doing, and many of our tribal programs are doing, is to try to offer lifespan vaccines. We have every vaccine that's available, even if we're there for a COVID clinic. So we're trying to really encourage people to, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I'm an old public health nurse at heart, and I can't stress that enough. We have to prevent things from happening when we can. And so we not only will be offering you a COVID vaccine, but if you're due for a tetanus shot and it's been 10 years, you're probably going to get offered that as well. And I encourage you to take it. The science has shown that us giving these vaccines with one another in conjunction is safe. And we encourage that. And a lot of times people need a couple of boosters for the COVID. If you choose the Pfizer or Moderna as your vaccine, you will get 2 doses of that. So you have an opportunity to maybe, if you have other vaccines, get those at 2 different times. If you have the J&J, I strongly encourage you to accept any other vaccines that are offered to you at that time as well. But if it doesn't work for you, that's fine, because we are available anytime. You can make it to our walk-in clinics. We have a lot of walk-in clinics. We have tents set up outside some of the facilities, and sometimes we're taking mobile trucks out and really parking in the middle of a district and being there all day to offer what we can. And I would just echo what Dr. Hill said about the question regarding body stature. There has not been any difference in that. The vaccines do go in the muscle of the upper arm. And so we really haven't seen any difference in responses. And I do like to try to talk to people about what is a reaction versus what is an expected response from any vaccine. And a lot of things that people talk about, I had a really bad reaction to a vaccine. In the general population, they're talking about my arm got hot, it might have gotten swollen. Where I got that shot, I might have got a little bump under there. That's actually an expected reaction to a vaccine. And the COVID vaccine does have some of that in some people. And many people report having nothing at all. Maybe they felt it when they went to sleep that night if they're a side sleeper. And so it really just depends on the person. And I would also echo what he said about having the confidence that if you do kind of feel bad after you get that first or second dose, that is evidence that the vaccine is doing exactly what it should be doing. The body's recognizing that and making an antibody against it, which is exactly what our immune system is supposed to do.
Thank you. Jaysha, I wanted to ask you if folks in your part of Oklahoma were looking for the vaccine, is it fairly easy to find, or what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, I think so. Where we're located, we have an Indian health clinic here in the Pawnee area, north central Oklahoma. And in fact, when they were opening the vaccine through these different tier systems that we have here in Oklahoma, or the different priority systems, many folks were coming out of the way to come here to get the vaccine because we do have a really great team that does work at this particular clinic. Any complaints I had before COVID are kind of out the door because of how they were effectively testing folks, and then the way that they operated their vaccinations to the public. It's been really, really accessible and pretty efficient. So.
Well, before we close our conversation, Jaysha, is there any final comments or thoughts you'd like to offer?
As a birth worker, we always tell people to make the best informed decision possible, even as somebody who's advocated for civic engagement, such as voting. Please make sure that your research is credible, that the information you're getting is, through a credible person. If it's, an oral type of story, somebody giving their testimony about the vaccine. And then also anything you read comes from a credible source, so that you can make the best decision for you and your family. And I think, as Superman mentioned, all of us have been touched in some dramatic and drastic way during this pandemic with the loss of loved ones, culture bearers, and we can't, really afford to lose any more. We need our future as much as we need to, reflect on those foundations of the past. And thank you for having me, Mado.
Well, thank you for all your work working with mothers-to-be at the beginning of that sacred journey, and for your Echo Hawk name, I'm sure also brings a lot of responsibilities now. You've married into that high-powered family of community leaders. So thank you for taking time tonight. You mentioned Superman, and before I offer final words to Nicholas Hill and to Dale Knutson, let's watch the coming soon 15-second on your phone shot in the arm, because this thing is packed with energy and information from the We Can Do This Indian Country campaign. Let's watch Superman one more time, and we'll come back to Dale and Nicholas.
Honor our past, be influenced by those who came before us, and rise to make a difference. It's easier than ever before to be a modern day warrior. Let's get vaccinated so we can get back to making history. We can do this.
Superman. I wish I was that cool. Nicholas, you're closer. Thank you for joining us tonight, and please thank Geraldine Church and all your colleagues for all your efforts with the health board. These health boards are so critical, right? Because they are mirror, sister, cousin, brothers to the Indian Health Service. Nicholas, what are your final thoughts as we close our conversation tonight?
Yeah, it's such an honor to be here. I'm so thankful for this opportunity to serve with a full heart. I would offer that people fear what they see. We're conditioned to fear that, whether it's a charging animal or, a flash of lightning and a crack of thunder, we retreat or we take action to protect ourselves. This COVID virus is the worst virus most people will ever come across in their whole life. And we're not conditioned to understand the threat that it could come from the breathing or maybe the sniffling, cough, or sneeze of a loved one. And the reality is that that is more of a risk than getting the chance of hospitalization is greater from that than it is from that strike of lightning while being out in a lightning storm. And that's so hard to understand and think about. President Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Now, insert in that phrase your sovereign nation, your tribal community, your family members, your loved ones, your friends, your elders, and your youth. Ask what you can do for them. Getting vaccinated really is probably a relatively small risk that you'll end up in the hospital. It's not small, but it's small relative to a lot of threats now. But over the course of everyone who's in your community, it's high as a whole for certain people. So you have to really think about getting vaccinated. Don't think about yourself. Think about what you can do for those that you love. And I think the reality is schools, tribal colleges, universities are all going to be opening up soon. We know from the United Kingdom that transmission among the youth are driving that epidemic now. We're going to see that happen here. We're going to see this threat increase. As that happens, we need to take good precautions, but this time it's a different situation. We have the most effective tool in the toolbox possible, and that's vaccination. So please consider using that. Tools are meant for their use, and please consider to protect not only yourself, but those you love. And thank you so much for this chance to talk.
Thank you for your time and your commitment to Native American health, Nicholas. Dale, thank you for, I'm sure, some long days of the last 15, 16 months since the pandemic started. What keeps you going, on those long days and those long drives from Wombly to Martin to over to Oglala and Pierre and wherever else you have to go?
North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Nebraska. What keeps me going is that, especially when the vaccine became available, I would have stayed up 24/7, and I know a lot of my healthcare colleagues feel the same, because one more arm that we could get it into meant one more person or one more family member that was protected from COVID. And I just encourage anybody who is still thinking about getting the vaccine, go to the people that you trust with your healthcare decisions. Take the time to have those conversations and get your questions answered. That's what we're here for. We're not here to pressure people to make a decision, but we do want you to have the best information available. And we will take that time to answer every question that you have to make you confident in getting a vaccine and making that decision for yourself. There's a lot of healthcare decisions that we wind up having to make across the course of our lifetime. And while some people, this is a simple decision, others it's not. And we want to make sure that you feel confident in the decision that you make around vaccine.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's almost Friday. I hope you're looking forward to the weekend and resting up and coming back strong next week. This is the We Can Do This Indian Country Plains Community Edition. It's been great to have these conversations from the Southwest to Montana, now to the Plains. And our sponsors are the Department of Health and Human Services and the Indian Health Service, and tonight the Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board. Go to wecandothis.hhs.gov and check out that information. As Dale said, get some good information. As Jasha said, check your sources. If it's someone sharing a personal anecdote, ask more. This is what I heard you say. Is this what you really meant? Let's keep this conversation going. We heard earlier from Representative Buffalo about bridging differences and how do we do that. Let's find a way to work with folks that might not see it the way we do, But if it's about our young kids and getting sports and getting school back to some sense of normal, this vaccination is one of the tools in the toolbox, as Nicholas Hill said. I want to leave you tonight. I was blessed to take a trip to Navajo country last weekend, and many of the tribes in the Southwest haven't stopped wearing masks, right? Some of us went to Walmart 2 months ago and suddenly we don't have to have our masks on anymore, or we went to the restaurant. Let me show you a couple pictures in my travels. This is Dr. Crystal Tooley Cordova, who's the principal hydrologist for the Navajo Nation. This was Monday. This was just Monday, and she's at more than a couple dozen water stations that she and colleagues helped create on the Navajo Nation. You remember reading the accounts of a lack of running water in hundreds, if not thousands of homes there, right? And so they created these safe water stations where they tested the water and there wasn't, arsenic and other poisons in the water, just in response to COVID. But Dr. Tooley Cordova there is still wearing that mask, even as she's filled her water bottle for the day. Let me show you a couple more pictures. This is Deb Tiwa from the Hopi tribe, and I saw her leading some training for solar energy. And she had young people at this training, 20-somethings, 2 tribal college students at least that I remember hearing and talking to. Young 20-somethings, a 3-day training. And during the course of that training, they had their masks on the entire time. When you go into restaurants, when you go into hotels run by tribes, the staff are still wearing masks. They never stopped. And so I was just struck by the dedication of the tribal people there. And it's just, to me, another sign that we can do this. We can take whatever step is necessary, whether it's, getting the vaccine or masking up, right? It's about another ounce of prevention, as Nurse Dale said, right? It's just one more thing that we can do to protect the people around us. So thank you for watching tonight, everybody. We Can Do This Indian Country. Check out wecandothis.hhs.gov or vaccines.gov. And thank you very much to all of our guests tonight. Nicholas Hill, Dale Knutson, Jasha Lyons Echohawk, and Representative Ruth Buffalo from Fargo, North Dakota, the MHA Nation. Good night, stay safe, and keep the conversation going.